But I've also heard you tell the story about how you worked on an initiative around school, like food essentially, and that surprisingly that wouldn't be too much of a shocker to our audience, that if you actually change the quality of food in schools, you can reliably like increase children's health and probably like their test scores and IQ and such. But when you started to take that seriously, it got shut down. Tell me the story there.
Yeah. So when I was working in consulting, we worked in the private sector, which was what I was just talking to you about, but also in the public sector, in the public sphere. And when we did so, one of the clients was the Department of Education. And so we worked in partnership with professors from Harvard and other institutions to identify and study the top after-school programs in the nation. So we identified basically a couple dozen of the top-performing schools that took these kids that generally weren't having a high rate of graduation or performance and weren't pursuing college, and within a few short years, turning that around completely. And so we were identifying these schools and then looking for the mechanisms. How did they do this? Was it great teachers? Was it paying the teachers better? Was it being out in rural environments? Like, what were the different metrics? So we kind of had all these spreadsheets and did all of this work, and it took over a year, and did all these site visits as well, and met with the kids and met with the teachers. And there were a number of factors that were making improvements. And a lot of that was based around areas of interest for the kids. And being after school programs, it didn't have to be strictly academic either. Right. It could be a book club or have multiple activities, but oftentimes the kids were coming for the activities, which was about sports and games. And sometimes it was about kind of the enrichment that was there, which could be a computer or books that they could have around. But more than anything else, the thing that we found that turned these kids around was if there was a high quality source of food there, or if even there was food there at all that was reliable for them, then they would show up to these classes and courses and programs for the long haul. They wouldn't just show up a couple of times and hope to be interested, but they weren't, because they've had a tough background and they're dealing with stuff and having trouble at home. And so like they're not going to come unless they're really interested or unless there's food there. And so it was having the high quality source of food there, combined with this area of enrichment, but without the food, they would never stay long enough for this thing to happen. So it was like this critical thing. And we put this, big report together and delivered it to the Department of Education and all the higher ups there. And I was really happy. And so were a lot of the professors, and we were stoked. We're like, this could really change the face of education in a lot of ways, because this is not how schools are built. Maybe some charter schools and private schools here and there, and especially these days, it has gotten better in certain circles that way. But we thought, man, if schools knew this at the public level, this could really make a big difference, and they could put this into action. And so basically, long story short, the government was like, okay, thank you, put it on the shelf. You guys don't need to talk about this anymore. You're paid. Go on. Move on to the next thing. And after that happened, I was so deflated after feeling like we wasted millions of dollars, by the way, like millions of dollars. And I wasted, more importantly to me, not that I wasted millions of dollars. It wasn't my money at all. I wasted more than a year of my life, and as did everyone else who was working on that project. So I didn't want that ever to happen again. And this was my attempt at changing things from the top down, from within the system, right? And then I re-examined that and tried to build from the bottom up, grassroots. And that's what really encouraged me to have the motivation to write fiercely. And I was writing fiercely for a long time, podcasting fiercely to get this message out there, because I got burned. I can see other people getting burned, and you all deserve to know this. And so if there's a way to get this out there, then I'm perfectly willing to be the mouthpiece of that. And as long as my energy is there, then I'm still willing to keep that fight going. And I think we are making progress, but sometimes it doesn't feel like we're getting as far as we should.
Yeah, I feel that. And I hope, because I agree, it's felt for such a long time like this. It is a grassroots movement. It's a bottom-up movement. And it feels like we're on the precipice of maybe some momentum from the top down.
Yes.
Certain figures getting involved. There's actually a conversation globally happening now, Make America Healthy. Like there is at least a conversation, but it's wonderful that you transitioned and kind of redirected that energy into this bottom-up approach and like educated people, but it's still very frustrating why when you take that, and there's very clear evidence, and I'm guessing there's no shortage of budget concerns here for the public school system. Like, why exactly is it so difficult to change things from a top-down approach when the evidence is clear? Something like, hey, feeding these kids better outcomes. We've got the evidence. It makes a lot of sense. We've probably got the money. Let's do it. And all of a sudden they're like, crumple that up and throw it and pretend it doesn't happen. Like that. What do you think is going on there? Is it just like our food system is so corrupt? It's so corporately captured? Like, what is that?
I think it's incentives, and it's the system itself is just not built with those incentives in mind. That's what I realized is working with the Department of Education. I figured that they would be concerned with how do we educate American children as best as possible, and beyond America too, by the way. But that's not what at least that government organization was doing at all, or at least the people who were working there who I interacted with, that wasn't really on their radar, much to my surprise. And so I think part of it is because it's that phenomenon when you hear about someone in your neighborhood who dying. It's an absolute travesty. But you hear about 42,000 people dying in some disaster somewhere, and you're like, oh, that's awful. Like, sounds bad, but I don't feel anything.
One death is a tragedy, 1,000 is a statistic.
And that's what was going on in real time at the Department of Education and in some of these other areas too, because they're so divorced from the day-to-day interaction with actual children that it doesn't even compute that that's what they're doing there. It's like Severance, that TV show or whatever, where it's just, you're a number monkey moving numbers around. You don't know what they do or what is happening on the other end. And I think there were a lot of good people there, but the system is just not built to help support kids that way. Even if you're going through the motions of doing the work, but it's not going to do anything because, once again, it's the incentives at play with these. If you look into the backroom contracts that Coca-Cola and some of these beverage companies have with schools, and the millions of dollars that are being funneled into these schools only by virtue of the fact that they have soda everywhere, which we know for a fact is destroying kids' health and everyone else. They're so immensely profitable that a lot of these schools don't have enough budget that comes from anywhere else to really even keep going, and so they are underfunded. But it's not due to a lack of money being out there. It's just the money is being siphoned off to these other initiatives that are being put on a shelf, or just kind of like, a lot of, once again, backroom deals and back scratching, and who knows where the money is going. But it's not to support the kids, and that's what really matters. So when I hear things like plans to shut down the Department of Education or what have you, it sounds extreme, but my experience is such that I don't think that we should get rid of government entirely, but directionally we should go there and head in that direction to really subtract as much as possible, because there's such an extreme amount of waste and nonsense and just par for the course stuff that's going on that we deserve better, and the next generation not only deserves better, but like there's so much at stake here that we don't have the time to just kind of goof around and pretend that this isn't happening. Like the next generation will be far worse off than ours and the one that came before us if we don't make major changes right now, I think, to the food system, the education system, and so many other things as well. And so the powers at B, or the powers that shouldn't be, or the ones that are kind of there right now that are losing their footing, I think that's all well and good. And we need to be building parallel systems at the same time, not waiting for them to fix it or for it to get better. It's probably not. And I don't know if they can fix it from the inside. So the alternative there is to build a parallel system, or do whatever you can in your own local communities to make these things happen. Listen, it doesn't have to be an officially sanctioned after-school program for kids. You can just start your own little soccer league and have, grass-fed organ meat hot dogs there as just like a goofy thing. It's like, hey, kids, come eat eyeballs and brains and play some soccer. This can be something that doesn't have to happen within the normal guises of institutions that we recognized before.
All right, friends, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps to spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.